through my career, I have found that you take psychology and hospitality and put it together with business and you get HR. HR is a critical function because there are so many laws and guidelines and best practices that you really do need to follow just to keep your business functioning legally. When you're making decisions for hundreds of thousands of people, you're having to make decisions that work across the broad spectrum. You're painting with a really wide brush, right? Managing sick leaves right now is incredibly difficult because
Kelly Price is the founder of Thrive HR, where she helps small businesses grow by investing in their most valuable asset, their people. With a career that spans recruiting, benefits management, and executive HR leadership, Kelly has built a reputation for crafting people-first strategies that drive real business results. From her early days at Marriott International to her current work as a consultant, she's remained focused on one goal: building workplaces where people thrive.
I very easily can see a large entity, a multi-100,000 employee, automating a lot of things because of cost. I can tell you that AI will get to the point where it can make rule-based opinions, giving you empathy.
as you're building your AI systems, think about what's appropriate and what isn't. But I will struggle to be convinced that an AI agent or an AI bot should ever completely replace the human experience.
What I think you have brought us to is AI has value, use it appropriately. Please don't ignore the human component and try not to completely remove the human equation at all, everywhere, because... Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the AI for Business Owners podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Torello. With me today is my guest, Kelly Price. Kelly, you want to tell everybody about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jeff. My name's Kelly Price. I'm the founder and CEO of Thrive HR. We are a small business supporting small businesses. So my background is in human resources, and I partner with other human resources professionals and leaders to show small businesses why HR is a critical function in their business and how it can support the business success, not just do administrative work that costs money.
Have you always done HR in your career, or did you move around and find HR?
No, I actually found HR. My degree is in hospitality. I went into Kansas State University with the intention of majoring in psychology and becoming a therapist. I quickly
Okay.
found,
That
yeah, I
diverged.
quickly, yes, it really did. I got in there and I just really disliked the coursework.
Okay.
And
Okay.
what I
Well, it's part of what college is supposed to be for, right?
absolutely, yes, I definitely had some finding myself going on in that experience, and I had some friends actually who were doing hospitality, and to be honest, it sounded fun. I love helping people. My first job was in a grocery store. So I, yeah, worked there forever and ended up loving hospitality and had a career with Marriott for about 5 years and just was ready to do something different that had a little bit more of a regular schedule, to be honest. Got into recruiting through a staffing agency, and that was my entry point into HR. And through my career, I have found that you take psychology and hospitality and put it together with business and you get HR.
That's a recipe, apparently. Not everybody follows, but it's okay. You can invent your own recipe. There's totally
Right.
no rules, right?
It's how I do it, at least. Yes.
No. I honestly think my comment is simply what works for you. There's a pretty famous quote, or at least something that's always stuck in a minute. You'll understand when I say the word strainer. People have asked Stephen King for a very long time, why do you write horror? As opposed to something else. And his answer is simply, brains are like sink strainers, and what sticks in my strainer doesn't stick in yours. And so I could never write a crime novel, but what sticks in my strainer is horror, and that's what works for me. So for you, what sticks is a melding of hospitality and psychology, which becomes the words human resources.
Yes. Accurate.
Right?
I love that.
When you said you had a bit of a career with Marriott, was that front office? Was that back office? Was that corporate? Where was that centered?
It was in the hotel setting. So my first internship was a 12-week housekeeping internship. And we could probably do a whole podcast on what it's like to be a housekeeper in a resort. It's the hardest job I've ever had in my life. And A lot of people say every person should wait a table. I agree with that. I think wait a table and clean a hotel room because you gain a whole another level of respect of the people who do that and are responsible for that. So it was 12-hour days for 10 weeks. It was awesome. There was 100 of us interns from all over the world in this resort. So incredibly fun, hardworking, awesome opportunity. And then quickly found that I did not wanna do housekeeping. Management of it is one thing, but I really enjoyed the front office. So I was a front office intern 2 more times, and then I moved directly into front office leadership right after college when I went to K-State, and, that was a ton of fun because it was really making sure people had the experience from the second they walked in the door that we wanted them to have. So I oversaw the front office, the concierge, the bellman, the parking staff, often. It was a ton of fun, and I did that for, like I said, about 5 years altogether, and then moved out into more corporate America.
Did anything specific trigger the move or just time to find the next thing?
So I was in Dallas right after college, and then I moved down to Miami, and I am the youngest of 4 siblings. All of my siblings started having children, and I was not a part of that. So I moved out back to Kansas City from Miami, Florida, and wanted to be close to family and be with my 6 nieces and nephews at that point. So, got back here, worked for Marriott in Kansas City for a short period of time, and really just found that the evenings and weekends and holidays wasn't gonna be a fit for my life. So, got out of that and found a staffing agency that hired me and got into recruiting and really fell in love with the concept of, helping people find employment and find, a way to support their lives.
So tell us a little bit about your business. What is it? Just recruiting staffing? Are you doing other stuff? Like, give me a little more detail.
No, absolutely. So Thrive HR actually doesn't do any recruiting. We have partners that do recruiting, but it through my career, I went from recruiting to management and then into overall HR leadership. And I really found in my time that I loved working with the leaders of the business and helping them figure out what's the right fit, putting the pieces of the puzzle together, essentially. So the strategy really became where I found most of my passion. And I worked with startups, smaller businesses. The last large company I worked for was a community bank that supported the entire United States, but we grew that while I was there from about 250 to about 500 employees. The previous company, we went from 200 to 800 employees. So helping those businesses scale and think about people in a strategic fashion instead of just having them, kind of be robots doing pushing buttons, really makes a difference. So when I was at the bank, went through COVID, kind of went through what a lot of HR people went through, which was major burnout and stress, and decided, you know what, I'm ready to go out and do this on my own. And like I said, my passion is working with those small business owners and showing them that one, HR is a critical function because there are so many laws and guidelines and best practices that you really do need to follow just to keep your business functioning legally. And sick leave, for example, I was just having a discussion with a broker partner of mine before this, and managing sick leaves right now is incredibly difficult because not only is there's no federal law, and then unless you're a government contractor, and then there's state laws, and then there's city laws depending on the state that you're in, and then there's just your company policy, and small businesses specifically, they don't have huge departments of people when someone goes out to just somebody else can do their work. It's like, no, how do you even get the work done? So finding something that actually works for the employees and works for the business as well, and making sure that their policies are not non-compliant with the state, so then they get sued and it tanks their business and has nothing to do with what they're actually trying to accomplish. That's what I wanna do. I wanna take the burden off of HR compliance off of them, help them build that really strong foundation, and then just say, "Check. Okay, that's done. Now we don't have to worry about that anymore. Now let's look at workforce planning. Now let's talk about compensation. Let's talk about benefits programs. How can you do things that make you an employer of choice so people want to work here? And how can you do that in a way that then supports your business? So, what's your business strategy? What are you trying to accomplish? How do you make money? What's ideal for you? And what type of people are going to be successful in your business? And when you build that strong foundation, you can move up to that fun stuff of figuring out how to keep your business successful and thriving through the people that are actually doing the work, because AI is amazing and it can do a lot of things, but it cannot replace humans. It's never going to 100% replace humans. So we still have to be thinking about the balance of maximizing productivity and managing people. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it answers the question well, and I think it's a pretty good sort of umbrella description of what Thrive HR offers, and obviously you're passionate about it, which is
Yes.
good.
Yes.
You mentioned AI. It does appear to be an AI podcast. Uh, where are you right now with respect to AI? And in this particular case, I think I'd ask this two ways. One is for you yourself with respect to Thrive, and then are you doing anything for your clients with respect to HR? AI for HR for them.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm pretty all in at this point when it comes to AI. But I will tell you, I was a slow adopter. Probably the last year of my life, I've really, in business, figured out that AI is an incredible tool. I had the fear, like a lot of people do. And I would say a lot of HR people have the fear of AI too, because so many business owners think like, "Oh, I don't need people anymore. I'm just gonna have AI do that. I can have AI write my job descriptions. I can have AI write my performance reviews. I can have AI tell me what compensation should be, and I don't need that function anymore because I can do it through some Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever system they wanna use." And my answer to that is it's a tool. It's not the doer, because you also can go, and I know of AI platforms that are awesome that you can say, I just had this conversation that with this employee that's difficult and tell me what to say. And again, that's a great tool. It's a great way to work through some conversational things. I have AI. I named my AI agent Harriet the Helper. I call her HH
Sure.
for short. We have
Okay.
conversations on the daily. Um, but it's not real life. It's not reality. It's not a person. It's not going to take into account the things that could happen, and that do happen because people are unpredictable, right? So I use it for job descriptions. I use it for performance management. I use it for writing policy and procedure. I use it for literally everything. I really do, because it's an awesome tool. And I encourage my clients to use it, because if you do it correctly, you are saving yourself a tremendous amount of time. I believe you still need human reasoning and conversations and an executor, because you can have AI write a performance review. And if you've uploaded the correct information and given it all the correct prompts and really understand how to use it from that standpoint, it can create a really awesome product. However, if you think downloading that, I'm looking at my computer right now as I say that,
Fine.
downloading that and then emailing it to the employee is how you should do your performance review, you are sadly mistaken. There is still a conversation that has to happen, because there's going to be emotion behind what you wrote, even if it is all praise and all good. How upset would you be as a human and an employee if your manager emailed you your performance review and said, just read this, and then found out that they had ChatGPT write it?
There's an interesting question that I certainly can't answer myself, but I do think there's some portion of the population who'd be like, I love the non-confrontational version of this. I don't mean this. I'm not trying to disagree with you. I'm trying to think it through, right?
No, you're fair. That's so fair, Jeff. So fair.
There are some folks who, are confrontationally avoiding, don't like, they're not good in those sort of stress situations, et cetera. And maybe there's a variant of what because I agree with what you're effectively saying, which is, also a good tenet of leadership, which is A, be present, be in the moment, and actually listen to the employee, have a conversation, listen to what they say. When you deliver your message, deliver it and stop if they're asking questions, all those things. Yes, I concur. I wouldn't shake that. But at the same time, there are some employees who are like, just send it to me and then we can talk tomorrow or whatever. Like, cause they have anxiety and they don't want to be sitting in that Zoom call or if it's remote. And right. Sometimes for them, it's even worse to be in a conference room together. And maybe they can deconflict that by read the commentary and then come and ask questions. I don't know. I'm not trying to reinvent it, Kelly. I'm trying to think about it in real time with, what we're talking about. However, I don't think an AI can do either of the two things we're talking about there. To not today. Um, I can make an AI call you and have the conversation with you, and I can have it figure out what to say, and I can have it respond to your responses, just like when you type to ChatGPT, because language is language, whether you're speaking it or typing it. But I'm not suggesting at the moment, even though I tell you I can make that happen, that it's the right thing to do for everyone.
I agree with everything you just said, and take AI out completely of the conversation. There's absolutely times when it's appropriate to send someone their performance review, let them process it, and have that conversation later. And I think that's just, to your point, being a good leader and knowing your employee and knowing how they're going to process information. Because I have a client right now that I work with, and she's 100% that way. She's like, if we're going to have a meeting, can you send me an agenda in advance so I can prepare for what we're going to talk about? Because that's just how I process. So yes, 100%. That's knowing your people and meeting them where they are and all of those good buzzwords. So I do 100% hear you from there. But again, it's the people component of it, and that's a big part of what I do is helping those business owners understand appropriateness, because there's appropriateness 100% to say, let me use AI as a partner to help me get through this difficult conversation or figure out how to use words that are more empathetic or more direct. Some people need help being softer, some people need help being
Right.
harder.
Right.
Either way, it can help you do that, but then you still have to say the words as a human. I hope we never get to the point where my review is I work for myself, so I can review
Right.
myself. You're doing a bad job.
No, wait,
But
your clients could review you though. Hang on.
that's
There's
true. No,
reality
no, no,
there.
no. No,
It's not a
you're right.
performance review, but it is a performance review, right?
It 100% is. If they're the ones that pay the bills and
Right.
and keep me in business. So, but I hope I never get a electronic message from an AI agent that tells me you are doing a fine job. Thank you for your help.
Or worse,
Or
you could get
worse.
fired by fax like Marty McFly from Back to
Oh
the
my
Future, right?
gosh, that's hilarious. Yes.
This is an important point I think we should, totally address. I very easily can see a large entity, a multi-hundred thousand employee behemoth, an Amazon. I'm just going to pick on Amazon, whatever. Automating a lot of things because of cost, because of et cetera. And I can even see to some extent, and this is not going to be the personal touch, small business sort of approach that I think I would want to focus on and that you're certainly focusing on. But there's always going to be this large behemoth enterprise, you're just a number sort of environment.
Yes.
Marriott, we can just pick one, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Who's going to say, yeah, we figured out, we've run the numbers, and if we actually don't have interaction, we have less negativity. So we're gonna fire, like, no, I'm making that up, but someone's gonna do it.
Yes.
They are, and people are gonna get a text message performance management thing, the most impersonal thing you could think of. I'm not suggesting I agree with that methodology, but I do think in the real world it will happen.
I can't agree more. It will. It will happen. It will, to your point too, some people will be like, okay, at least I didn't have to talk to the person and now I know what the expectations are. So I think that there could be a place for it. There really could be, but I think that those companies that are trying their play again, it goes back to appropriateness. What's appropriate to automate and what is not appropriate to automate, and could you be using it as a tool to say, like, perhaps I automate the fact that we're going to have a meeting and these are the bullet points that we're going to talk about. again, that still makes my HR spidey sense go a little bit nuts, because if you send me a meeting for 4 o'clock on Friday and we're going to, the bullet points are performance and attendance, then I'm pretty sure I'm getting fired.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. This is not going to be a bonus.
no, no,
I
this
think
isn't
I've
going to end
context
well
clues.
for
I might
me.
have inferred that this is going to go one direction.
Pretty much, yes. Yeah, so it's all about appropriateness and really being thoughtful and how to execute that. I mean, I think the whole entire world we live in right now is all about message delivery, and it's a huge problem. I'm not suggesting we take a left turn into that discussion by any means, but I think you can apply it across all brands and all companies. What's your intention, and is your intention going to be executed through that means of delivery? That's the question I think you have to ask yourself.
To just add some color to the commentary, right? I spent 20 years working for Intel Corporation, which was never less than 100,000 employees the entire 20 years I was there. I see this as a two-sided system, just speaking from my own experience. My direct manager and maybe manager's manager and I had a personal relationship. I did not have a personal relationship with HR or senior management. And when decisions were made from afar, they're not taking into account, nor can they really with that large of an like if you were in HR for a 100,000 person company, you've got to make some pretty generic rules and decisions. You can't take into
Yes.
account, the vagaries of every. But what I saw in the beginning of that experience and what did not carry through for that 20 years was, I don't want to say a hands-off approach, but a more sort of gentler, we're going to set the basic guideline at a high level, and we expect local management to do the right thing for their people, whether that's deliver the message thusly, etc. And then as time went on, it became much, 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 much more controlled. And the local management is getting their hands tied and they're not able to do any sort of, we'll call it deviation, for lack of a better phrase. Now, I'm not supposed to be an HR professional, so I'm certainly not trying to speak like that. What I'm saying, though, is I know there's legalities and other things involved and liability in certain cases, especially with lawsuits, et cetera. So, HR has to clamp down, but it does take out some of that direct humanity element that we're talking about. Again, and this is at big companies. In small businesses, I think there's still liability to be covered. You certainly would agree with that. But I do think you can still have that sort of one-on-one or, personal relationship touch in the smaller entities, at least for now. I never really felt that after, I'll say, the first 8 or 9 years. That just, from my perspective, it just went downhill. It just became all corporate.
Yeah, and I think there's a huge call to action there to corporate America to say, what have you done to undo that? Because what you said before is exactly the way it should be. When you're making decisions for hundreds of thousands of people, or even a couple thousand people, you're having to make decisions that work across the broad spectrum. You're painting with a really wide brush, right? I mean, even going back to what I was saying before with leaves and managing short-term disability and leaves of absence and maternity leave and all these things, if you're trying to make a decision that's going to work across multiple states and locations and demographics, then you kind of have to paint with that wide brush, but then allow the people who are in the middle management or local management positions, one, it's your responsibility to educate them on and make sure they understand what the box looks like. And, I used to say in the small business that I worked with that became a larger business, we stay in the box, but we go all the way to the edges. So really understanding what that looks like. And again, the call to action to corporate leadership is teach your people what the box is and give them the empowerment to go to the edges, to be able to be flexible and give the employees what they need to be successful. Because I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're worried about spending a tremendous amount of money on things that you could be saving money on, but you know what you could be saving a hell of a lot more money on? Turning over great employees.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, again, I'm on a soapbox at this point, but
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Well, look, let's spin this a little bit. Let's talk a little more about. Let's brainstorm what cool AI things could be invented to solve some of this complexity and stuff. Well, the first thing that came to mind, and I want you to riff on this and try to think as well. You're going to have way more content here than I will. But if HR officially draws the box, but there's an HR chatbot that understands the complexities for different geos, for different municipalities, et cetera, and the local resources have the ability to ask the chatbot, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I tweak this? Can I adjust that? Is this allowed? Because you and I both know that that takes forever in the
Mhm.
current structure that exists, and no one up above will ever approve a variance because it puts them at risk, and they don't want to do that,
Right.
right? Now, I don't know if that's the right HR bot to create, but I think there's a way HR can actually improve this scenario, not have to replace something. I think there's a way to fit this in where the correct amount of freedom can be given where it needs to be just by programming and training the HR. What do you think about that structurally?
I love that, and I've literally had conversations with clients about it. One of the areas of AI that I'm expanding my business into is onboarding. And again, I could go on a whole soapbox about onboarding, but I won't. But hiring a new employee and then setting the expectations of what they're supposed to do, not only from this is the type of company we work for, this is like the unwritten rules, like this is where you're supposed to park, this is the lunch places close to us, this is where the trash is, this is where the bathroom is, this is this is that's Sally's parking spot. Do not park in Sally's parking spot. Just those silly little things. But also, how am I supposed to do my job? What systems am I supposed to have access to? How does Teams in this company really work? Do we send group messages, or do people have their own little groups? Those types of things. And also customer service is a huge area, I think, of opportunity for most companies to use AI in onboarding and training. Because if you can load your policies and your procedures and your marketing material and your products, teach your AI agent, create a native AI agent, teach it about your business, and then use that AI agent, bot, whatever you're going to call it, to let your employees learn faster. So if you have a client that calls and says, I need ABC item, and I'm on my first week and I don't have the slightest idea what an ABC item is, I can enter it into the system, and then my system can help me figure out what goes along with that. What should I recommend? What questions should I ask? So I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity there. And then extending that into human resources to say, let's say you do have 10,000 people in your business or even 150 people in your business and you have one HR person. If they had a HR chatbot that said, "Hey, I need to take a leave. What do I do?" Instead of calling Jessica, who sits in HR and has 150 people calling her and the executive team asking her to do this and open enrollment to manage, they can say, "Oh, fill out this form and email it to HR@abccompany.com." And it sends them the form and they can do that.
There's two things in there I wanted. So obviously you need to sell Harriet. Clearly that needs to become a product for you, right? Because you've obviously put a whole bunch of knowledge inside of that. And so it probably would be a lucrative thing. That's the first one. A second thing I want to talk about because I think it's reality and I want us to not ignore it. A lot of folks right now think that your idea of having the content available for the person who received the call to go look up and how do I do something? A lot of people want to drive that to just be a self-help chatbot on a website and not
Oh,
have the human answering the message. You know what I mean?
yes, I do.
And I know you're in HR. I know your job is to staff. I'm not trying to mess with you, but
No.
I think there's a lot of leaning towards this. Let's just make the automation do all the things and not talk to people directly, which I don't necessarily agree with, but it is what people are trying to do.
Well, I think that there's a component, again, of appropriateness. I keep using that word, but yes, up to a point, because I can think of a bank that I've banked with, and they have a chatbot, and I have a few questions, and then it gets to the point where it's like, you need to talk to a customer service rep. I like that combination. I like that inside business. I like that inside HR. I even like that inside training because you can't it's human nature to be unpredictable and to ask a question that nobody knows the answer to, right? Because you are going to be the first person who's ever had that problem before at some point, right? But there's those things that like everybody needs to know what my PTO is. Everybody wants to know when the next holiday is and are we going to get Friday after Thanksgiving off? And those types of questions. Are you going to let me leave early the Friday before Labor Day? Those types of things that are really easy and it takes no reasoning to answer those questions. So I love that concept for that level stuff. But I think if you can know what's appropriate to answer questions to in business or when you need a person, um, you should still have those people where it says, I don't know the answer to that. Let me connect you to someone. Because also, if I'm calling and saying, I'm getting ready to go on maternity leave. I'm having some health issues. I might go earlier than expected. The last thing I want to do is talk to a chatbot about that. Or even, my bank got hacked and now I have no money in my bank account. Again, I don't want to talk to a chatbot about that. I want to talk to a human that's like, shit, sorry that happened. Let me help you figure this out.
Right.
I need some
Right.
empathy. I need some relatability. So again, I almost 100% of the time think there's a place for it, but it's at what point do you cut it off and say, let's allow people to have the human experience and connect with somebody?
I agree with what you're saying. And I actually think a good midterm approach for the idea of let's replace everything with a chatbot is your definition was a very useful determiner, which is if you're asking a frequently asked question or a rule-based question, there's no reason an AI can't answer it. When you ask an opinion question, a human should be pulled into the mix. That's today AI for where we are. I can tell you that AI will get to the point where it can make rule-based opinions, and then that's another whole component, but that's not exactly where we are today. But I will say this. I could develop and deliver a very convincing AI today, where we are right now, that could do better than a 50 or 60% job at giving you empathy and trying to, for not necessarily your bank account's empty, because you don't want empathy, you want sympathy. There's a big difference. Like,
Right.
and you're agitated and everything else. And I'm not disagreeing with your concept there. But what I'm saying is we've had such bad experience with early chatbots and early brain dead solutions that people deployed because they wanted the cost savings. They didn't care right? Because a lot of companies did that for years. And chatbots aren't new. As an example, I was just helping a friend of mine who was desperately trying to figure out where their 2023 tax return went that they thought they had submitted through TurboTax, but they couldn't find it. And their current tax system did not show the 2023 tax return. It turns out they had two separate TurboTax accounts with the same email address,
Oh my gosh.
but different passwords and different phone numbers for reasons that don't make any sense for this conversation. And they could not get into that other account and get to their details. And they tried every variation they could with the phone number that you call for TurboTax, which never ever finds a way to a human. It's just a loop for an IVR, interactive voice response, or the online chat. Eventually, after a pretty aggressive tone, the chatbot finally said, give me your phone number. Let me have a human call you. Well, it didn't say human, but it said, let me have an agent call you. And that actually worked. And that phone call took place within about 90 seconds. At which point the rest of the solution ends, just in case I sucked everybody into this damn story. She had never clicked submit on the 2023 tax return. She'd gotten to the point where she paid it, but never clicked the last TurboTax button that sent it and filed it. And so she didn't ever have filed 2023 taxes. But she did have a payment for it, and she was like, what's going on? And, the folks on the phone were like, we don't have that data anymore. You never submitted it. It's not saved. So do your 23 return again, which obviously is a whole nother debacle. I won't bore everybody with the rest of that story. But but the point is, these really inefficient, not sufficient, not good chatbots that couldn't even really do FAQs well are what we're all trained with at the moment. And so there's, I think, sometimes a visceral reaction of, ugh, chatbot. Think of it as, when you talk to ChatGPT, sometimes you get some pretty startling responses and you're like, wow, if that was your chatbot, which is what we can produce right now, you might be more accepting. Not necessarily you want your review delivered that way, like we talked about before, but you could probably get a little bit further along than what we're all used to, right? That's the point I'm trying to make. My fear is that a lot of systems are going to move to this. We can let the AI do the vast majority, and we don't do opinion. Corporate says, you can already hear the words, right? Corporate said the rules are X, and we don't allow deviations. There's a phone number you can call, but it's just a voicemail box, and we respond once a month. Something like that, right?
Exactly. Yes.
I don't mean that only in HR, by the way, Kelly. That's the future I think we're headed to for a lot of things.
That's terrifying, to be honest. I think there's a company that I can think of here in Kansas City that has done it really, really well. They are, and I have a girlfriend who works there in HR, actually, as how I know about it. They have very intentionally trained all of their tens of thousands of employees on AI. They have made a corporate initiative to educate their employees on AI, why they should use it, how they should use it, how it works within their industry, and just in general, this is a great company. I hugely applaud them on that because I had lunch with her a couple months ago and she was telling me about how well they've adopted it and how much better they are off because of that adoption.
Good.
Now, again, call to action to corporate and everybody who owns a company, figure it out and train your people on it, which, who knows if anybody will choose to do that. But I think it's also like, I'm Gen X. We're getting to be the older generation in the world. We're all stubborn as hell and, that's fine. But if you want to grow and you want to be with it and you want your business to sustain, much less thrive, you got to figure this stuff out, right? I think that's number one. Educate yourself and figure out how to do it right and get happy about it because it's not going away, right? You have to figure that out. But also, please don't forget the human factor in all of this because I've had that situation too where it's like, I just want to talk to a human. I have this really weird situation that I wouldn't even text a friend about. I would call them and say, I got to tell you this because it's going to take me 17 hours to write the text where it makes sense. So that's just where again, appropriateness, I'll use that word again. Just as you're building your AI systems, think about what's appropriate and what isn't. But I do want to just say, have you watched the show Suits?
I have in the past, yes.
Okay. Do you remember the Donna? And I think the second to last season where Donna's their IT person builds a Donna bot. So Donna's the do you remember this? Yeah. So they build a Donna, they teach it empathy, and they're trying to resell the Donna for all those attorneys out there who need an incredible legal secretary who can help, keep them straight. And it's hilarious. Again, I do think there's opportunity with being able to train your agent into thinking a certain way. I've been able to write some really great stuff because I've been able to teach Harriet the tone I want her to speak in. So there's, again, some really, really cool things that you can do there. I will struggle to ever be convinced. I won't say never because I should never say never, but I will struggle to be convinced that an AI agent or an AI bot should ever completely replace the human experience.
I think you basically tied up the podcast, but let me summarize. Well, I'll give you the last word, but let me summarize. What I think you have brought us to is AI has value. Use it appropriately. Please don't ignore the human component. Be aware of your constituency, whether that's employees or customers or whatever, and try not to completely remove the human equation at all, everywhere, because sometimes you just do need to talk to a real person.
Yes, beautifully done.
All right. Well, look, we're done.
Awesome.